this workshop is really how to tell your story. And I think for me, my goal is that you learn some of the elements of telling effective stories. So that you can really tell a compelling story about your organization. And to me, compelling stories are stories that influence beliefs and motivate action. Some of what I share will have broad relevance to all communication, but actually primarily my focus is going to be on story and stories. So what is this? This, of course, is a bottom line. So I think the most effective way to communicate is telling a story. And actually, I don't just think that. That is really supported by extraordinary amounts of research, that the most effective way to communicate is to tell a story. And why is this? Well, it's actually because our brains are hardwired to hear stories. And I think we probably thought that for hundreds and hundreds of years. But relatively recently, there are these MRI machines called functional MRI machines that you don't have to be sick or in the hospital to get an MRI, but that can actually be used in research to understand so much of what happens in our brain. And so imagine that each of us in this workshop had a little functional MRI machine recording what's going on in our brain. And imagine we're in some kind of class together and the professor is lecturing, right? And what the MRI machine will sort of show is our brain is kind of like humming along, like loop, loop, loop. And then the professor tells a story. And oh my goodness, that MRI machine reveals that our brain just lights up when we hear a story. And so all the receptors for hearing the story, processing the information, remembering the information, all of that gets lit up in our brain. So really the good news is that our brains are literally hardwired for stories. And there's a little bit of bad news, which is if you don't tell us a story, we will often make one up. So think about a company, an organization, a business that has really invested in doing extensive orientation and onboarding for new employees. And they have this 10-hour orientation that they run for new employees. Imagine that, right? And so the new employee has finished this 10-hour orientation, and now they're at their first day of work. And a coworker comes up to them. Well, back in the day when coworkers could come up to us and talk to us, and a coworker comes up and says, "Let me tell you how things really work here." Which do you think the new employee will pay more attention to? So I'm actually going to stop and just ask you to put in chat. Is the new employee going to pay more attention to the 10-hour orientation training, or is the new employee going to pay more attention to the coworker who says, "Let me tell you some stories about how things work here"? Yep, you all got it. It's the story. It's the coworker. And so this research was actually presented to some CEOs of really big companies that invest a lot of money in orientation training. And even they realized that the story was going to be more effective, even as they continued to sort of invest in this orientation training. All right. Okay, so let me give you a second question, which is, which of the following generates more donations? So we certainly know that hunger, oh my goodness, hunger is just like spiraling out of control right now, all around the United States, and really in many parts of the world, and certainly here in Massachusetts. So which of these things do you think generates more donations? A long letter from an organization that meets the needs of people who are hungry, detailing lots of facts and figures about hunger in Massachusetts, how many people are newly hungry, that, you know, the numbers of people who are hungry, the numbers of people that this organization serves? Or will more donations be generated by a story about a particular family and all they have to do to really find and have enough food every day? So again, put in chat which of these you think will generate more donations. Yeah, so again, the story, and what I see from Victoria, and I actually think this is a great answer, right, is that she says, we always try to provide both.
Right.
Which, I mean, I think that's really lovely, because I don't actually think it comes down to an either or. But at this point, I guess I'm trying to really convince you of the power of stories. But I actually think that answer is really the better answer, which is share both. I have to say for myself, I struggle with this one. You know, I'm a longtime academic, trained as a social scientist. Oh my goodness, my life is about facts and figures. And, you know, and I just, sometimes I resist the fact that actually, you know, a single compelling story is going to generate more donations. It's like, I don't really quite want to accept that. But the truth is, you know, the truth is important to recognize. And then, you know, if you are an organization serving the hungry, I think follow Victoria's suggestion, which is share all those compelling facts and figures, but tell some stories. Okay, so this next piece really refers really broadly to kind of all communication that you're doing above and beyond stories and storytelling. But there are 4 questions that you should ask and answer anytime you're trying to communicate something. And the first question is, I guess I'm just going to use we, you know, I'm going to use we here. What are we trying to make happen? What is our organization trying to make happen that isn't happening now? And I think it's just really helpful to have an answer to that question, because otherwise communication can be kind of flat. It isn't necessarily specific enough. It isn't really well targeted. You know, so anytime you're communicating, try to ask yourself, is there something with this communication that we're trying to make happen that isn't happening now? And if it's, I don't know, if it's awareness about your organization, try to say that as specifically and concretely as you can. If you are communicating to build greater awareness, again, try to dig into that a little bit. Greater awareness so that people will understand what you do, people will access what you do, people will donate to you, so that people will tell other people what it is you do. But I think the more specifically you can answer that first question, the better. And then, you know, the next ones kind of fall from that. So once you've figured out what are you trying to make happen that isn't happening now, you know, think about who has to act to achieve that goal. If it's everybody, again, you know, maybe not. And I'll actually give an example in a couple of minutes about moving from a kind of very general goal, a very general what an organization was trying to make happen, and with a very sort of untargeted audience, and how they moved to something much more specific. So when you figure out who has to act to achieve that goal, then think about what would motivate them to act. And the answers to those three questions should really form your communication strategy. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to share all these slides with everybody. I know I'm going to give them to Dennis. Dennis will send them to everybody who's here today. So you don't have to take notes. You don't have to be like, oh, hey, she's going too fast. I don't really remember this. You'll have all the slides. And then the final thing to think about is, how do you get that message in front of them? So again, let's really start with this. What are you trying to make happen? And as I said, this is your strategic communication goal. And it's better to make that goal as specific and measurable and actionable as possible. And I'm now going to work through an example of, there's an organization in Ireland that was trying to build support for marriage equality. Their original goal of their communication was to build support for marriage equality in Ireland. Ireland was actually about to have a national referendum on marriage equality. And the people who were supporting marriage equality were concerned that that referendum would not pass. So they did some research to figure out who supported marriage equality and who did not. And what they learned in that research is that for the most part, older male voters were the least supportive of marriage equality. Young people of all genders were supportive. Women were fairly supportive of marriage equality, but the group that was least supportive were older male voters. So what you see here is a photo of a very targeted communication campaign they had to older male voters. So they had older men, older women, young people, again, multi-genders or whatever, but it was all aimed at older men. And what they had learned from the older men was what was going to change their mind, what was going to motivate them to act was family and friends. So the whole communication was really oriented to, again, to older male voters, and to kind of say to them, hey, your son might be, your son might be gay, your daughter might be gay, your friends might be gay, whatever. So it was, it was just really all focused on them. So then, who has to act? Again, and I think this example did a good job of it. Target your audience. If your first answer is everybody has to act, I think I would encourage you to pause and think about that a little bit. And if indeed the answer is everybody, then maybe still parse out, what are you going to communicate to this particular demographic group that might be different from what you would communicate to that demographic group? Because what I would argue is communication for everyone often becomes kind of communication for no one. It's flat. It isn't well tailored to a particular audience. And then if you think about, the next question to ask is, so, okay, we've got our goal. We know what needs to change. We know we've targeted a group or several groups. We've targeted our communication to several different groups, and then think about, okay, what would motivate those people to act? And oftentimes for me, I try to just like walk in the shoes of the other person. And if I'm not able to do that well, call them up, talk to them, do a survey, get information, right? There's so many ways you can get information about the people that you're trying to reach, to help understand what would motivate them. Explain what you're trying to do, and just ask them, okay, what would motivate you? What would make a difference for you? I think emotions are great to use, and in particular, try to activate emotions like awe and pride and joy. And, it's probably fairly obvious, but actually try to stay away from guilt and fear, because what we know is those emotions don't motivate us. And I think a lot about climate change. And I know that, I'm scared about climate change. I feel guilty about climate change. And sadly, oftentimes it means I just really want to pull a blanket over my head. Whereas if I can be given some optimism about climate change, I'm much more likely to act. So Danella Meadows, who's unfortunately no longer with us, but Danella Meadows was extraordinary at understanding that people needed positive news in order to act around climate change. So she had this weekly column in a newspaper up in New Hampshire, where every single week she told a story about something really extraordinary that was happening around climate change. And what she discovered was that that was much more motivational for people than scaring them to heck or making them guilty. And, try to inspire people's curiosity. Try to appeal to, get people curious about what it is you're trying to do. So let's see, Kelly Laflamme sent me the following, and I actually thought that this really did a great job of kind of asking and answering the 4 questions. And in the 3rd slide, I'm going to ask all of you to put in chat, do you feel motivated by what you're going to be asked to do? And it's only going to come up in the 3rd slide. So that the kind of frame for this is trying to reframe the idea of aging and to recognize that words matter. And the goal of this campaign was to reach early adopters in new places and increase the organization's outreach with audiences they've already encountered. Their audience is people in the field of aging, who communicate about aging issues and strategies to improve the experience of aging. And the organization believes that society should treat older people as equals and ensure they have meaningful opportunities to participate and contribute. I think this is kind of a no-brainer. It's not like a controversial goal whatsoever, but I think it's really not a goal that's really happening as much as it should right now. So what the organization understands is the problem is ageism. And starting at an early age, ageism gets under our skin. It shapes the way we think about ourselves and others as we grow older. Underlying ageism is really actually implicit bias. It's unconscious decisions and judgments that create patterns in our thinking. And so the organization says, well, the antidote to this is to tell the full story of aging. So the organization believes we can confront ageism by telling a different story, a story that honors the reality that everyone ages in their own way. Words matter. If we change the way we think and we talk, we can change discourse, we can change policy and practice. We can ensure all of us have the opportunity to participate and contribute to our communities as we age. So the initiative is research-based, it's research and it uses research-based communication tools and research-proven impact to change how people think about aging. So what the organization needs is you. So they want to know, will you join the caravan to reframe aging? So I'm gonna stop here and ask you all to be, to just honestly say in chat, are you ready to share your story? Especially, hey, you know what? I'm 71 years old. I'm sure I've got a story to tell, and I'm probably in the demographic. Some of you here are probably a little bit younger than that, but still, just based on those 3 slides, are you motivated to share your story? And just put it in chat. Okay, so we've got some yeses, we've got some enthusiastic yeses, we've got an I'm not sure. So Victoria, I wonder if you could just say a little bit about what you would need to be more sure, because that's really going to be helpful for this organization. Victoria, are you willing to share?
Just put in chat.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, you're not sure how your story connects to the organization. You know, so I actually think that that's a good point. One way to improve what you saw on those 3 slides was to you know, spend a little bit of more time at the end kind of personalizing this. What stories does the organization need and why? And, you know, and maybe even create a couple of case vignettes of stories that they've already gotten, so that you could have a better understanding of, do I fit? Do I not fit? What kind of story would they want? So Margie, I also saw that you weren't sure. Anything you want to say about your uncertainty?
Well, same as Victoria, I would say I'm not really sure how my experience applies to what the organization is asking for. I like your idea about giving case vignettes. If I could say, as I read the article, yeah, I can understand now what they need, then I would feel more motivated to do so.
Great, good. Okay, so that's some good feedback for Kelly, that you're kind of well on your way, I think, to recruiting some new people, but some additional information is needed.
Good luck, Kelly.
Okay, so I'm going to talk now about some ideas that come from a book called Made to Stick. It has actually the best book cover ever. You know, it has it seems like a piece of duct tape on the cover, which, and as we know, those of us who do work around the house know that duct tape is like the stickiest thing on earth, and thank goodness, right? And so Chip and Dan Heath wrote this book. What their central idea is anytime we communicate, our goal should be to be sticky, to have things that capture people's attention and that they remember. And so they have this kind of mnemonic for stickiness called success. And the mnemonic consists of the following elements. So simple. Anytime you communicate, the simpler you can be, the better. So instead of, you know, this sort of complicated idea, write something simply. You know, when I wrote my doctoral dissertation and I was having my defense, one of the faculty on the committee said, well, I hope this doesn't offend you, she said, but I actually understood everything you said in your dissertation. And I think she thought it would offend me because, of course, in academia, nobody values simplicity, or very few people value simplicity over complexity. But I mean, I was thrilled. I said to her, I'm delighted that you told me that, because I really, anytime I communicate, I try to make what I communicate just as accessible as possible to everybody. So the first part of stickiness is make it simple. And if you can't make it simple enough, maybe give it to somebody else who doesn't know as much about the topic as you do, to say, how could I simplify this? Edit it for me, make it simpler. The second is unexpected. And I don't think all of our communication can contain an unexpected element, but when it does, it really captures people's imagination. So here, this little visual is, the banana cracks open, and what's that little green fruit in the middle? Kiwi. Is that a kiwi? Right? Yeah, right. So, we're not expecting that. So to the extent that you can include a little bit of unexpected in your communication, you're gonna appeal to people's brain waves. The third element is concrete. The more concrete you can be, the better. And I'm going to end today with a story I got from Juliana Field from Cradles to Crayons. It's a lovely, lovely story talking about one of their constituents. And it's just beautifully concrete. So, just look at words you're using, look at phrases you're using, and say, are they more on the abstract end of the continuum? And if so, how can I push them to be more concrete? Credible. So this is a cartoon of a guy saying, "Oh, my plastic surgeon is great. They got out the stretch marks that I achieved because I repeatedly stretched my credibility." But it's important to be credible, to be believable. And that's not the same as sharing all the detailed facts. Sometimes we actually don't want all the detailed facts, but it's important to basically to know that whatever you're communicating is supported by detailed facts. A little bit going back to what Victoria said earlier, if you're going to tell a story about a particular family that's hungry, make sure that you have the facts that underlie that story. Emotions are, just a very, very powerful way to communicate. And I think stories really lend themselves to emotions. Stories that contain some emotionality to them tend to be really gripping, really powerful stories that people pay attention to and remember. And of course, Chip and Dan Heath their stickiness ideas were kind of communication in general, but they really end with the idea, and it really reinforces what I'm saying here today: use stories, use stories, use stories, use stories. Okay, so how do you find stories? If you're going to use stories, how do you find them? So I think, talk to donors. Ask donors why they donate. Talk to your board members. Ask, why are you committed to this organization? Why aren't you a board member on a different organization? You've got other things to do on a Tuesday night. Why do you come to our board meetings? Talk to the clients that you serve, the constituents that you work with, and ask, what difference has your organization made in the constituent's life? Of course, here, if you're going to share their story, you either need to get their permission or you need to hide their details so that it's not clear to whom you are referring. In my opinion, even still, you actually need to get the person's permission to share that. And I mean, that's going to be the case with donors and board members as well. But I think it's just more sensitive with constituents and clients. Talk to the staff of your organization. What are they proudest of in their work? What gives them real satisfaction? What makes a difference? And I really want to say you should be gathering stories all the time, because good stories are just such a great resource for organizations. Don't know what just happened here. Sorry, subtitles aren't currently available. I wasn't trying to get subtitles. Okay, a couple more things. Stories rarely come fully formed. So if you have the beginning of a story, you may need to work at it a little bit. You may need to flesh it out. Start with a success that your organization has had and kind of work backwards to what's the story behind that success. If what you do helps people realize their dreams or overcome problems. You know, there are going to be so many stories in that. So talk to people, hear about how have we helped you realize one of your dreams? How have we helped you overcome a problem? If your organization has recently changed something you do, start with that change and work backwards. You know, think about what were the obstacles or the challenges that change helps resolve. All of this is going to be really fertile territory for stories. Okay, so now I'm going to move to a program description that was sent in by Ann Hager from Boston Scores. And I'll just give you a minute just to read this description. And I will point out just a couple of phrases that just jumped off the page for me, really, really powerful phrases. So I think the first is born out of the desire to close the opportunity gap. Just, I think that's, it's a beautiful phrase. I feel like it's a powerful phrase. It's evocative. Then the next one for me is play equity gaps quickly become help equity gaps. Just a short phrase that says so much. And I don't know that I'd ever heard the term play equity gap. I think we all have heard the term health equity gap, but to sort of so I think this is unexpected, sort of creating this term. I don't know that anybody else uses it, but at least for me, it was unexpected, a play equity gap. But realizing, oh yeah, you know what, those gaps in people's kids' opportunity to play actually has health consequences. And I just will stop here and say, I think there could be an opportunity, Anne, to tell a couple of stories about young people who use that program. So I don't know if, I think Anne's here. Do you want, if so, do you want to just turn on your microphone and say hi?
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you for calling on me, and thank you for sharing my story and discussing it.
Yeah. So, so my understanding was that you were trying to create something really short to go on the website to sort of help everybody understand what Boston Scores does. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, of course, I would love to tell the story of our organization, how we were created.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, I have looked at many different angles of how to tell that story, because I think that's the most, accessible story for many organizations. But for our case, it's really just that we basically copied a program that was founded in DC, and which was just the great idea, the brainchild of a public school teacher in DC. And someone else thought, oh, that sounds like a great idea. We'll bring it to Boston. And then we just grew from there. I mean, it was just, in the beginning, we served like 6 schools, and now we serve 30 schools. And we just progressively grew, and it's just not a very compelling story. And I talked to the founder, the first ED of this organization, and I asked him, like, which need did you see? And can you tell me more about, what the problem was that you originally were trying to solve? And he was not able to talk about it, or he did, I don't know, he just didn't talk about it when I asked him. So this is not a good story. So I was, for the longest time, I was thinking, and that's why I'm so grateful for this workshop, I was wondering, like, what story can I tell? So I thought maybe I can tell the story of the need. And I understand that, of course, now I can tell, like, take this construct that you just highlighted and go out and find students who would be able to tell me that story. Like, before I joined Scores, I was not able to play soccer, to become part of a team, to have these opportunities that I have now through Scores.
Right.
So I felt your assignment was pretty open. So I know that, I mean, of course, I have student stories too, but I was curious about your opinion on that core story of who we are and why it is important that what we do. Yeah, because
Well, yeah, I have a couple thoughts, and I also, if others want to give advice, either unmute your microphone or put it in chat. But I actually would encourage you to maybe after this workshop, go back to the founder of Boston Scores and try to push a little harder for that founding story, because I do think founding stories can be very, very compelling. So I would encourage you to actually push a little harder. And maybe that person can't tell that story well, but do they have a spouse? Maybe the spouse actually has a better way of telling the story than the founder themselves, or somebody else who kind of knew that person. I also think getting stories of young people, they could be really, really short stories of young people who've participated in the program, would be great. Anybody else advice for Anne?
This is Sue. I'm with Newton Community Farm. It could just be that I'm not familiar with that term, play equity, but when I was reading it, I thought it said pay equity, and I got a little lost. So my only advice would be, if you were going to use, a unique, innovative term like that people might not be used to hearing, maybe don't make it the first part of a new paragraph, because I had to go back and reread it and figure out what it was. I like the phrase, but it just got me a little confused.
Yes, Sue, thank you for sharing that. And had there been like a little asterisk or something, and then down below a little definition of play equity, would that have worked better for you?
No, because I think that would have taken me off the message as well. But maybe just something like the ability for all kids to have a chance to play, or play equity, or something like, just like wrap it right in with a sentence and say what it is. Then it's a new term, and I feel like I've learned something, and I can relate it to other kinds of equity.
Great. Okay. Thanks. All right. Anne, I think you've gotten some good suggestions here.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, so the next piece was submitted by Margie Weeks. Margie Weeks has been asked to write a story about Julia. I'm probably not pronouncing the name right, but Julia CSEKO, who's an umbrella Artcubator. And so I just got kind of 2 slides working through. At this point, Margie has kind of mocked out the story with this sequence. So I'll just take I'll be quiet for a minute to let you read the first slide, and then I'll go to the second slide. So what I'm interested in from hearing from you folks is, what part of this story did you find most interesting? So I'm going to go back to the first slide. So we hear that Julia is the current Artcubator. She's a Brazilian American visual artist. How long she's been in the role, when she started, when she finishes. We get a little bit of what the Artcubator award really is about. We hear that Julia loves being in the space because of its natural light and beauty. Julia is currently making an 8-foot by 3.5 foot. That's already a bit of a big painting, but she would make larger paintings than that if she could. But she worries that the painting won't sell, and then she's going to have to store it somewhere. Then we hear, what she's thinking about doing next. We get a little background. And, she says, really one of the hardest things about being an artist in the Boston area is showing your work. So I'm just going to stop there and hear from folks, and put it in chat if you want. Which part of this story did you find most interesting? So we're hearing some different answers here. And so of course it's always complicated, right? Because anytime we communicate, we're like, oh gosh, how do we meet everybody's needs? So actually, Margie, let me ask you, what's the goal in telling this story? What are you trying to make happen that isn't happening currently?
Well, there are a number of Artcubators that will have residents, at the Umbrella Center for the Arts over the next year or so. So really what I'm doing, and just as a preface to what I'm seeking to do, I was given the name of this Artcubator. I was given the questions that I should ask her. And I spoke to her over the phone and asked these questions. So really what I'm doing is trying to tell a story about the artist and her work.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that's the real goal for me. But I'd be grateful for any kind of feedback people have on how to make it more interesting.
Okay. So I'm just going to pull this up and just share a few of my thoughts. So I am not terribly interested that she's been in the role since September 2020 and will be in the role until February 2021. I think that could go at the bottom. Almost like just almost like after the story is over, sort of in italics or some kind of different type font or something, just say,
Sure.
Because I could imagine somebody being interested in that, but at least for me, I agreed with somebody who said, although people were struck by different things in this. So again, I think it's complicated to sort of figure out what to listen to, but I actually was really struck also by that she would make even bigger paintings if she didn't worry about storing them. And so, maybe move that up. The Umbrella's current Artcubator is Julia CSEKO, a Brazilian American visual artist.
Mhm.
Great. Maybe something quickly about what the heck the Umbrella Artcubator Award is, it comes next. But then I don't know that I would say Julia loves the building next. I think I might talk about the work she's doing. And so I actually, again, I found it really interesting that she would, because I had to stop and think about 8 feet by 3.5 feet. And then that's when I
Yeah.
realized, well, that's actually already a pretty big painting. And
Right.
she'd like to make even bigger if
She
she
makes
could.
huge paintings.
Yeah, right. So to
Amazing.
me, that's just really interesting.
Yeah.
And then maybe a paragraph after that kind of what she loves about the space. Because I actually, and I think a number of people said they thought that that was interesting as well. This, this paragraph that talks about that she focuses on during the pandemic, she focuses on all the things we could have done in the past that we didn't do. Try to make that more interesting. Like maybe even just give a specific example of some kind of a video that she created, right? And then sort of make the point that actually this video is part of a series and it's all really focusing on the things that we can't do now, but we didn't do before, but now we probably want to do them because we can't do them, right? I just think, I think there's something cool there. And so I often think about how, when we write stuff, we often kind of do it chronologically. We sort of do it beginning, middle, and end. But I actually think that oftentimes this thing called in media res, right? Start in the middle, is really a great way to get people's attention. And then you can backfill details that people might actually want, but they're not going to grab their attention. So I think I would recommend doing a little bit of kind of what are the most interesting things, put those much sooner, and then go back and fill in some other details that could be interesting to people.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Great. Okay, so second to last thing I'm going to do is share a story that Juliana Field from Cradles to Cradles sent in. And this to me is just a masterful story. So this is just such a great example. And she had a little bit of text even before where I've started. But clearly this is a letter that's being sent to donors. It's a thank you letter to donors. And I cut off a little bit of the early text. But I'm actually going to read this because I just think it's so great. So again, it's addressing donors. Without you, parentheses donors, we couldn't provide basic essentials to thousands of children in need across the Commonwealth, making a world of difference for families like Kayla's. Kayla is a single mother of 2 young children living in Somerville. Money has always been tight, but this year it's worse than ever. Kayla worries every day about how to keep everyone in her family happy, well-fed, properly clothed and diapered, clean and with a good roof over their heads. And now with an uncertain winter approaching, add safe, healthy, and warm to the list. It's no wonder Kayla felt a huge weight lifted from her shoulders this month when she received diapers, warm clothes, new shoes, face masks, hygiene items, and other children's essentials, thanks to Cradles to Crayons. Knowing help for her kids is available when she needs it allows Kayla to feel more at ease, which makes everyone in her family happier and life easier overall. It's a short, relatively short story. It's told really powerfully. I said earlier, so much concrete language, right? The diapers, warm clothes, new shoes, face masks, hygiene items, right? We can picture every single one of those items to ourselves. And then it concludes with, your compassion, again, this is addressed to donors, your compassion and commitment to supporting Cradles to Crayons keeps kids in our shared community feeling safe, warm, and valued, and gives parents like Kayla peace of mind in this challenging year. None of this would be possible without friends like you. From the bottom of our hearts, thank you. So I'm just gonna pause here and just, Juliana, I think you're with us. I thought I had seen her sign in, but maybe not. Anyhow, just other people's thoughts about that story.
This is Kelly. I was going to type, but that would take too long. But I thought it was really a well-crafted story as well. And one thing I was thinking that might strengthen the closing is to add kind of with Kayla's mind at ease, what can she do that maybe she couldn't, in terms of, she's able to, I don't know, like be a more focused parent or able to focus on work or whatever it is that it enables her to do, I think would make it even just a little bit stronger.
Good. I will pass that on to Juliana. Okay.
Molly, this is Abby von Schlegel.
Yeah.
I agree completely. It was very donor centered. It had specifics, as you said, that the reader could visualize, and it talked about thanks to me, the donor.
Mm-hmm.
It made it be very personal.
Right. And you know what we know with donor stewardship is it's good to thank people without asking them for additional money. And when a thank you is well done, it will generate,
Right.
additional money. If not sort of new money this year, it will keep those donors motivated to give next year and the years after. So again, I just thought it was such a great example. Okay, so now I want to end this session with a story that I want to tell. And it's a story about Martin Luther King. And on August 28th, 1963, Martin Luther King gave an address on the Mall in Washington, D.C. And it's a speech that's often called the I Have a Dream speech. But Martin actually almost didn't give that speech. So the story is that he had spent a number of days in advance writing and rewriting the speech, and he wasn't happy with it, and he wasn't happy with it. So he kind of kept throwing out the drafts that he wrote. So on the day itself, he's up there, he's talking, he's not actually giving the best speech of his life. And Mahalia Jackson is up on the stage with him, and she says to him, Martin, tell them about your dreams. So he listened to her, and I think he had probably often talked about his dreams. And so that's when he said, I have a dream. I have a dream that someday my children will be judged by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. So I just wanted to stop here and say, make sure that you are sharing your dreams, your organization's dreams, in all the communication you do. Don't make the mistake that Martin Luther King almost made, and listen to Mahalia Jackson and say, Martin, tell them about your dreams. So I'll just stop there and hand things back over to Dennis.
Well, Molly, thank you ever so much. That was wonderful information, so much compacted in a, limited amount of time. So I thank you very, very much. Now, if you all like that one, I want to talk about the next one that we're going to have. Our first seminar of the new year is going to be on February 9th, 2021. And one of this country's top governance and fundraising experts, Abby von Schlegel, will speak on the responsibilities of boards of directors in the COVID-19 area. There's, as you know, There's a lot going on. For the first time ever, we actually have a preview of an upcoming presentation. Abby is with us today, and Abby, I'm going to invite you to unmute and turn on the video and say hi.
Thank you, Dennis. I've known Dennis for a long time, and I also have the privilege of knowing Molly Mead for a long time. I want to encourage you all to come participate, come is the wrong word, in the February workshop. You all have boards of directors or you are board members. And the real question is, what has your board been doing to help the agency? Have you been acting like ambassadors? Have you been acting like advocates? Have you actually helped with asking for gifts or facilitating asking? That's what we're going to talk about. And I'm delighted. I've always loved Nonprofit Net. And it was so fun for me to discover that Dennis is now the board chair. So thank you and happy holidays to everyone.
And thank you, Abby. And now addressing everyone, your feedback on this program is very necessary and also appreciated. I'm going to be sending you the survey link for your comments and programming suggestions, together with Molly's slides and a few other things like contact information for your donations to NPN. And I'm going to borrow from the Kayla story, saying, without you, we would not be able to bring you these programs. So we ask that you consider supporting us with a $10 or $20 donation. We do have costs to present them, and your support helps us keep them open to everyone. So thank you once again, and we look forward to seeing you next year. Bye-bye, everybody.